think we have just a couple of minutes while the Thunderbolt gains some altitude and just does those final checks before running. 50 cows, 8 of them. Sound as the 2,300 horsepower Pratt & Whitney double Wasp radial engine is really wound up in a dive and showing us here something of one of the attributes that made this such an outstanding aeroplane, namely the fact that because it's so big and so heavy, it was an aeroplane that you could build up a lot of energy in a dive. Particularly on an air-to-ground tasking, and then climb rapidly away. This was, however, also an excellent air-to-air dogfighter, perhaps not as good as the likes of the Spitfire or the Mustang as a close-in dogfighter, because it is a large, quite bulky aeroplane. But everyone I've ever spoken to who's flown a P-47 praises this aircraft's handling characteristics to the hilt, and as a gun platform for example, air-to-ground strafing missions, very steady, very stable, and it's those sort of attributes that meant it had such a great role after the P-51 Mustang came to the fore in the US 8th Air Force. Types deployed to Europe with the US Army Air Forces in the Second World War. There was this, there was the P-51 Mustang with the bit, and the very distinctive twin-engine, twin-boom Lockheed P-38 Lightning. And of all those three, it was the P-47 that played the biggest role in the lead-up to D-Day, softening up the German Luftwaffe at its bases on the ground. Aeroplanes. This one is in the colours of a P-47 of the 9th Air Force, which was also, like the 8th Air Force, stationed in the UK. The 9th primarily providing close support to ground forces, and it represents a Thunderbolt flown by the 492nd Fighter Squadron of the 9th Air Force in the D-Day period. This aircraft was capable of taking a tremendous amount of damage and still make it back home. Some amazing pictures from the Second World War of aircraft that did make it home, where there's more holes than airframe. And of course, one of the things that helped that was the double Wasp engine, which is air-cooled. We've seen the Spitfire and the Hurricane, Griffin engine, Merlin engine, all liquid-cooled. They have a lot of pipework. One round damaging that pipework means the coolant leaks, that terrible white thin stream of smoke behind, and the engine will cease. Not so in an aircraft like this. the 8th Flight Command switch in late 1944 from the P-47 to the P-51 called Huey Lamb, and he said they were not keen to switch from the P-47 to the P-51 for that very reason. They thought the P-51 would be badly affected by battle damage. Of course, they soon grew to love the Mustang, as he said, but it was in their mind when that conversion happened.
That dreaded little plume of white smoke behind the aircraft, which was the coolant leaking away, and that could come about by one single round. A rifle bullet from the ground fired into the air happens to hit some of the pipework, just like your radiator on the car. But of course with your car you can stop and let it cool down. In this you had about 90 seconds before the engine would freeze solid.
And in the sort of low-level roles that these aircraft were playing, especially in the European theatre, but also in the Pacific, that sort of survivability really mattered. We mustn't forget, Andy, that the RAF flew Thunderbolts as well, 830 of them, with Southeast Asia Command. You can see one of those is the other RAF museum located at North London, depicting that other really important aspect of this great fighter's history. Final pass then. Coming up, the aircraft will be landing back on our board, so an airplane we've not seen here for a few years. It did come in static displays on the RAF Cosford show in 2018. At that point, this airplane only just rejoined the British Airshow circuit. It was stored for many years in the ownership of the Whitney collection at Duxford. It was then sold to the USA, but since 2018, it's back here with the fleet of Whitney Aviation engineering. Aeroplane, beautifully flown, and a very, very important aeroplane for us to have as part of the lineup of airworthy warbirds on hand with different UK operators. Such was the role this aircraft had flying out of the UK during the Second World War. Gabriel Barton there, flying the Republic P-47D Thunderbolt. And we'll see the P-51 from the same operator, Fighter Aviation Engineering, a little later in the programme.